Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Quinton Mundell. Today's podcast is called Beyond the Surface, and we are going to have a look at the biological, the psychological, the social, and the spiritual roots of addiction.
And I'm Jean-Mare Olwage. We're both registered counsellors with the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And today we're going to dive deeper into the roots of a subject that's really near to both of our hearts. And that is substance use disorder, which we all commonly call addiction. Whether you're personally affected by addiction or you may be supporting someone who is, this episode offers a compassionate and a grounded understanding of those deeper forces at play so you can have a better understanding and the real possibilities for healing.
Addiction isn't just about willpower or about bad choices. It's often about survival, emotional regulation, unresolved pain. Today, we want to explore addiction through four interconnected lenses: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. And we'll take a closer look at trauma and attachments.
So let's start with the biological roots. There's often a genetic link in families where addiction shows up, especially in twin studies. It's not about one addiction gene, but a combination of inherited traits. Things like how sensitive your brain is to stress, or how easily you feel reward. So according to the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics in America, individuals who try and eat a legal drug before the age of 15 are 6.5 times more likely to develop a substance use disorder than those who wait until the age of 21 or later. So there definitely seems to be a link to biological roots.
Dopamine in itself also plays a major role in the connection between brain chemistry and addiction. Some people, unfortunately, are just born with fewer dopamine receptors. That means everyday experiences just don't feel as satisfying or exciting. So when substances like alcohol, nicotine, or opiates come into the picture, they offer a shortcut to pleasure or relief. It's easier for these people to become addicted, and I think for many the first use of a substance feels like finally being able to breathe. It's not about partying, it's about soothing something deeper inside, and that's why people tend to return to it, even if they know it's hurting them. But here is the hopeful part. Our brains are adaptable. Through neuroplasticity, the brain can change and heal, even after long-term substance use. New pathways can form. The same brain that once coped through substances can learn new ways to feel safe, connected, and alive. Our brains, in fact, are truly amazing. Let's take a quick look at the psychological factors and trauma and how they're linked to addiction. Childhood experiences shape how we relate to the world. Many people who struggle with addiction have a history of childhood trauma. Often, there is a link between the two. If a child doesn't feel emotionally safe, if they are not allowed to make mistakes, to explore, to simply be, if they aren't taught how to express emotions, then those wounds won't just disappear. They are carried often unconsciously into adulthood. And many times, addiction becomes an attempt to soothe or to escape those early wounds.
You make such a good point there that trauma plays such a central role. Trauma doesn't always mean just one single dramatic event. It can sometimes be subtle and chronic, that it occurred over a number of years, like emotional neglect, feeling unseen, maybe growing up in a home where love was conditional, maybe you felt you had to earn it. And those experiences tend to wire the nervous system for survival and not necessarily connection.
So addiction is actually not always about the substance. It's actually many times about the pain that hasn't been processed. When no one helps us regulate our emotions, and we haven't learned how to deal with our emotions as a child, we'll always go to something outside of ourselves, and we go to something which is available, like food, sex, alcohol, pills, and that becomes now a new form of self-regulation.
And it's important maybe to bring in here also parts work, that inside every adult who struggles with addiction, there's often a younger part, a child who still feels rejected, abandoned, or misunderstood. And that younger part is still trying to get their needs met. And it's not dysfunctional, it's wisdom. It's just showing up in a way that isn't working anymore.
Healing isn't actually about shame or blame. It's about listening with compassion to the parts of ourselves that carry pain. Every emotion has a purpose, even shame and blame. These emotions can guide us to reflect more deeply, uncover unmet needs, and open pathways for healing in unexpected ways.
Let's talk about the social piece and the environmental factors that play a role. The environment that you grow up in also plays such a huge role in shaping your coping strategies. So, if substance use was normalized in your home environment and it's something that you just wouldn't be on a consistent basis, or if your emotional support was missing, your nervous system adapted accordingly.
It's not always just about the family system. It's also things like poverty, community violence, racism, and lack of access to the healthcare are all added layers to stress. Chronic stress affects the brain's ability to regulate emotion, to make decisions. That's not weakness, it's pathology under pressure.
That's why it's essential to treat addiction in context and not just focus on one aspect. People don't wake up one day and choose to suffer. They adapt to survive, and for many, the environment is their first trauma.
Exactly. When people finally enter recovery, it's not just about stopping the substance use. They actually need a safe and supportive environment that teaches them a new way of being, one rooted in consistency, connection, and trust. I've always been interested in the link between addiction and spirituality, so let's explore that. Brené Brown says that spirituality is the belief that we are all deeply connected. And that's often what addiction erodes first. Our connection to ourselves, to others, and to something greater.
People in addiction often describe feeling empty, lost, or like they don't belong. And that kind of disconnection runs deep. So substances can help fill that spiritual void, if only for a short time.
So recovery often includes reconnecting to nature, to yourself, to creativity, to a sense of purpose, or to a higher power, whatever that means to you. It's not about religion. It's about meaning, belonging, and connecting to your own inner truth.
When people start to feel that connection again, when they feel like they matter and that they belong, that's usually when we start seeing the real shifts in recovery. It's not just about stopping something harmful. It's essentially about coming back to life. When children grow up with secure attachment, they learn the world is safe and that their emotions matter and that they have a voice. But when those needs go unmet, the nervous system shifts into survival mode, your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And there's a quote by Richard Cadre that states, when you're born in a burning house, you tend to think that the whole world is on fire, but it's not.
Addiction is often deeply linked to patterns because we are creatures of patterns and habits. When someone uses substances to cope with emotions, that response can become a habit. Over time, these coping patterns become embedded in how we react to stress, relationships, and emotional triggers. Substances often become a way to manage unresolved pain, especially when it wasn't safe to cry, express anger, or ask for help.
Fear and dissociation become long-term homes. Dissociation is where we feel a disconnection to our sense of self and surroundings. People aren't just avoiding pain, but they're surviving sometimes the only way they know how.
And healing starts with safety, feeling safe in your body, feeling safe in relationships. When someone feels truly seen and held, the nervous system begins to relax, and that's when integration starts to happen.
And I think a lot of us no longer really know what it feels like to be in a relaxed body anymore. And to realize that you can't think your way out of trauma. You've got to feel your way through it, but never alone. Healing is always relational.
Let's take a quick look at recovery identity and the myth of the cured addict. Something important to understand on the recovery journey is that recovery isn't a destination. There is no finish line. People often hope to be cured, but true healing isn't about going back to who you were before the addiction. It's about becoming someone new, more whole, more integrated, more authentic. Recovery is a journey, not a return. It's a path of transformation.
Recovery isn't a linear process. It's a journey, and it's got its ups and its downs. And there's often a myth that people are either clean or dirty, that they're healed or they're not healed, that black and white thinking. But real recovery is more nuanced. It's about learning to live with awareness, to listen to yourself, and to respond with care, even when you're triggered or you're struggling.
Many addicts carry a deep sense of shame for things they've done, and others may also project shame onto them just for being an addict. There is a lot of shame in addiction, and with that shame often comes labels. Addict, failure, burden, these labels can become your identity. But you are not your worst moment. You are not your addiction. You are a human being with unmet needs who found a way to survive. And healing can't really happen through those labels. You need to let go of the labels you've taken on, consciously or unconsciously. True healing is also relational. It's not just about you. It's about the people you've hurt. Many of them are on their own journey of forgiveness. So recovery becomes an integrated journey within yourself and within your relationships.
That's such an important point to bring up, that shame often just keeps you in the cycle of addiction as well. Because the minute that you use, you feel ashamed. And to get rid of that shame, you tend to use yet again to numb that shame. And I think that important part of not making it part of your identity, the difference between saying, I am depressed and I feel depressed. The minute you say I am, it becomes part of your identity. Whereas if you say I feel depressed, it distances yourself from it and it's something more manageable. And I think that's why part of recovery is rewriting your story. It's saying I'm not broken, I adapted. And it worked for me at a time, but now I'm choosing something different. And that narrative shift can then change everything.
That is very true. I also think an important part of recovery is actually the body. The body is where trauma lives and also where healing begins. But many people in recovery feel deeply disconnected from their bodies. They've spent years numbing, escaping, and avoiding what their bodies were trying to feel. And because they resisted feeling, they disconnected from themselves. But in order to heal, they have to reconnect to their body and to themselves. And that means learning to feel again. Because what you feel, you can heal. So it's absolutely essential to include the body in the healing journey.
I think what you're saying is that somatic work can come in and be a really powerful tool. Things like grounding, breath work, movement, even gentle touch. These practices really help us come back to the present moment. And they also give that message that you're safe now.
And sometimes what looks like numbness is actually the body saying, I don't feel safe enough to feel yet. When we offer the body safety, the inner journey can begin. That's when we start to reconnect to our sensations, to our emotions, and we give ourselves permission to feel. And with that, something powerful happens. We begin to have a choice, and we can choose differently. We can choose ourselves, and we can begin making better choices for ourselves.
I think it's important to remember that emotions tend to return all at once, sometimes a bit like a tidal wave. They don't tend to come back one at a time, and that can feel very overwhelming sometimes. But it's remembering that embodiment is not just a luxury, it's really a core part of your long-term recovery. Taking a look too at one of the most, I think, overlooked aspects of recovery sometimes is community, connection, and long-term integration. It's often sometimes a challenge even to find a community, but to remember that one of the most healing forces in recovery is community, and not just any community, but one that really offers presence, acceptance, and support. Many people in addiction feel times where they're isolated, ashamed, and like just no one gets it. And that isolation in itself fuels the whole addiction cycle.
So connection, or rather connectedness, is such a key part of recovery. Many addicts feel deeply disconnected from themselves, and addiction often creates more trauma than just for the person struggling, but also for the people close to them. This leads to even more disconnection from the very people they actually want to feel connected to. So the journey of healing from addiction is in many ways about returning to connection. Even if it is just one or two people you can feel safe with, that's a powerful place to start. It could be a sponsor, a therapist, a friend, a group. What matters is being seen and held without judgment. You need space to be, to rediscover who you are. And it is important that the people around you don't add more judgment. Because usually there is already a heavy load of self-judgment in addiction. When someone holds space for you with kindness, it gives you permission to release some of that judgment, to reconnect, and to begin to heal. Healing looks different for everyone. Each person's path through recovery is unique, but finding your way with the support of others is one of the most essential parts of the journey.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for the person struggling with addiction and anyone supporting someone who's struggling with addiction to realize that relapse happens. It doesn't mean failure. It doesn't mean that you start at point zero again. It's a signal that someone needs care. So when someone stumbles, they don't need punishment. They actually need presence.
Someone who is struggling with addiction needs to understand that relapse can happen. And when it does, it doesn't mean failure. It doesn't mean you are back at square one. It is simply a signal that more care, not criticism, is needed. When someone stumbles, they don't need punishment, they need presence. Because long-term healing isn't just about staying sober. It's about building a life that feels worth staying for. A life filled with real connection, relationships, creativity, time in nature, rest and meaning. We call that integration. It's not about removing addiction. It's about becoming fully alive. And often as people walk the path of healing, they begin to develop something beautiful, compassion. Compassion for themselves and compassion for others. Because once you've seen your own wounds, you are more able to see and hold space for the wounds of others. And when others can do the same for you, that mutual compassion brings deeper connection, less judgment, more healing. So if you are listening to this and you find yourself somewhere in the middle of your own healing journey, please remember, you are not broken. You are not alone. And healing is always possible, no matter how long it's been or how many times you fought.
Absolutely. And you adapt to survive. Those same connections can be softened, reshaped, and rewired. You can choose to have new responses, new connections, and new rhythms. And remembering that it's one step at a time and that view of just for today.
The opposite of addiction isn't just sobriety, it's connection. Connection to yourself, connection to others, and maybe even connection to something greater than yourself. But that kind of connection doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small, courageous steps, and it requires patience on your healing journey. Many people expect healing to happen in one big moment, one breakthrough, one decision. But just like you didn't fall into addiction overnight, you also won't heal overnight. Healing is a journey, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment, and every small choice toward connection matters.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Quinton, for the opportunity to discuss such an important subject, and a subject that I think a lot of people do tend to struggle with. And if this conversation moved you today, please feel free to share it with someone. Reach out. You were never meant to heal alone.
It's time to say goodbye. Until next time. Stay curious, stay kind to yourself, and keep coming back to your breath, your body, and your truth. See you shortly for more.